Welcome to Coffee Break. Thoughtful conversations for a busy world. Let's begin.
You know, there is this incredibly pervasive belief that we all sort of carry around in our back pockets. It's a comforting thought in a dark way. It's the idea that if things get bad enough, if a job gets toxic enough, or, a relationship gets draining enough, or our health gets poor enough, that we will automatically snap into action.
Right. That there's a floor, a rock bottom.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We assume that misery is this ultimate catalyst. Like eventually you hit that rock bottom, the music swells, and, well, the only way is up, right?
It's the standard narrative of almost every inspiring movie or biography we've ever consumed. The protagonist hits the absolute lowest point, the dark night of the soul, and that specific acute pain forces the transformation.
It's the hero's journey.
It is. It's what we're told change looks like.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is what we are really digging into today. What if that narrative is cool? Well, wrong. Or maybe not wrong, but dangerously incomplete. Because we've all been there. Or at least we know someone who has been there.
Yeah.
They are miserable. They know they're miserable. They can list every single reason why they are miserable.
She can give you a PowerPoint presentation on their misery.
Totally. They complain about it constantly. And yet, nothing changes. A year goes by, 5 years go by, and they are stuck in the exact same spot.
It is a baffling phenomenon if you look at it purely through a logical lens. I mean, logic says, pain is bad, therefore I should move away from pain. If I touch a hot stove, I move my hand, it's instant.
Right.
But human psychology is rarely that linear. We are complex, contradictory creatures.
And that is precisely where we are going today. We're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating set of insights from Coffee Break 051, and it's titled The Comfort of Familiar Misery. And honestly, just that title alone, it sent a shiver down my spine. The comfort of familiar misery. Sounds like an oxymoron. Misery shouldn't be comfortable.
It sounds contradictory, but as we're going to find out, it's actually one of the most powerful gravitational forces in human behavior. It explains so much. It explains why we stay in jobs that drain our souls, relationships that have long expired, and habits that we know are bit by bit destroying us.
So here is the mission for this deep dive. We are talking to you, the person who might be listening to this, on a commute to a job that you've been thinking about leaving for 3 years.
Or maybe you're an entrepreneur who feels stuck in a loop of burnout but just can't seem to change the business model because, that's just how the industry works.
Right. We want to unpack the specific mechanics of why we stay.
And spoiler alert, it's not because you're lazy.
Thank goodness for that.
And it's not because you aren't smart enough to see the solution. It's usually not a lack of strategy. It's a surplus of psychology.
A surplus of psychology. I like that. So we're going to look at the 3 pillars the source identifies: familiarity, identity, and the fear of uncertainty. We're going to look at why we choose the devil we know over the angel we don't. And hopefully, by the end of this, we can move away from blaming ourselves for being stuck and look at the actual emotional cost of change.
That phrase, emotional cost, is so key here. We tend to look at the logistical cost of change. Updating a resume, moving houses, losing a salary, learning a new software, all the practical stuff.
The stuff you can put on a to-do list.
Exactly. But we rarely account for the emotional tax that our brains have to pay to step into the unknown. And that tax, that is often what bankrupts our motivation.
So let's unpack this. The source sets the stage with a really counterintuitive statement. Misery isn't always enough to force change. Why? If I'm touching a hot stove, like I said, I pull my hand away immediately. Why doesn't that reflex apply to a miserable lifestyle?
Well, it's a great question. A hot stove is immediate, acute physical pain. Your body's reflex arc reacts before your conscious brain even processes what's happening. A miserable lifestyle, a boring job, a bad routine, a low-level toxic friendship is usually chronic, low-grade, and most importantly, predictable. And that is the operative word, predictable. The source makes a profound point here. People don't always choose happiness. They choose what feels familiar.
That is a heavy realization. We prioritize familiarity over happiness.
We do. And if you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes perfect sense. The primary goal of your brain, specifically the ancient parts like the amygdala and the basal ganglia, is not to make you self-actualized.
It's not to help me find my bliss.
No, not at all. It's not to make you fulfilled or joyful. The primary goal is just to keep you alive, survival. And to a primitive part of the brain, familiar means I have survived this before, therefore it is safe.
So let's apply that. Even if this familiar situation is a boss who yells at me every day or just micromanages me into oblivion, my brain goes, well, I didn't die yesterday when he did that, and I didn't die the day before. So this is a survivable scenario.
Precisely. You know the rules of that misery. You know when the boss gets angry. You know how to navigate the office politics. You know the exact route to work.
You know which corners to cut, who to avoid in the hallway.
Exactly. You know how to feel drained at 5:20 p.m. and how to numb out on the couch at 7:30 p.m. It's a routine. It has a structure. There is a strange sort of perverse sense of mastery in it. You have adapted to the dysfunction.
It's like being the captain of a sinking ship, but at least you know exactly where the holes are and how fast the water is coming in. You can predict the dampness.
That's a great analogy. You have the blueprints to the disaster. Now, contrast that with the unknown. Let's say you quit that job to start your own venture, or you move to a new city where you don't know anyone.
Right.
That represents a total loss of predictability, a total loss of control.
Which the brain just interprets as a threat.
A massive threat. The unknown is a black box. It could be amazing. You could find the job of your dreams. You could find happiness.
Yeah.
But you could also fail. You could go broke. You could be humiliated.
And the brain gives more weight to the bad stuff.
So much more weight. It's called negativity bias. The brain weighs the known bad against the unknown potentially good. And the known bad often wins because the variables are controlled. It's a risk calculation, and the brain is deeply risk-averse.
This explains so much about why logic fails us in these moments. I've had friends come to me with a list of pros and cons about leaving a bad situation. They have spreadsheets, charts, data. The pros column for leaving is a mile long. More money, better hours, better health, sanity. And yet they don't leave. And I'm sitting here screaming, look at the data, the math works.
But you're using logic to fight a feeling. That's the mismatch. You cannot spreadsheet your way out of a survival instinct. The emotional safety of the known bad overrides the logic of the unknown good. The source calls this familiar discomfort. It feels safer than unknown change.
Familiar discomfort. That phrase is really sticking with me. It's that Sunday night dread that you've felt for 5 years. It's terrible, but it's your terrible.
It is. It's comfortable in its terribleness.
And we have to acknowledge that humans have an incredibly high tolerance for low-grade unhappiness. An astonishingly high tolerance.
Right.
If the pain isn't acute, if it's not a heart attack, but just slowly climbing cholesterol, we can ignore it for decades. We normalize it. It just becomes the background radiation of our lives.
They just turn up the volume on the TV to drown out the hum of dissatisfaction.
That's it. It's just how things are. We stop even questioning it.
Which leads us directly into the next big chunk of this deep dive, because this is where it gets, I think, a lot more personal. The source talks about identity attachment and repeating old patterns.
Yes.
So it's not just that the situation is familiar, it's that we become familiar with ourselves in that situation.
This is a critical distinction. It's a whole other level. We don't just exist in a vacuum. We construct an identity, a story about ourselves based on our environment and our behaviors.
So if you spend 10 years in a high-stress, burnout-inducing career, you don't just do the work. You start to identify as the grinder. You identify as the person who can handle the pressure. You identify as the martyr who sacrifices everything for the company or the family.
Oh, I see this all the time, especially in entrepreneurial circles. There's almost a competitive misery, a badge of honor.
Tell me about it.
You hear people bragging about their lack of self-care. I only slept 4 hours last night. Oh, yeah, I haven't slept in 2 days. It's like the struggle itself becomes the validation.
Exactly. It validates their existence. It gives them a story. And here is the trap. If your identity is wrapped up in being the one who struggles, or the one who works harder than everyone else, or even the victim of bad luck, then, well, solving the problem means losing a piece of who you are.
Whoa, okay, let's unpack that. If I solve my problem, I lose my identity.
Think about it. If you identify as the hard worker who is always overwhelmed, and suddenly you create a life where you are balanced, calm, and efficient, who are you then?
I don't know, a stranger to myself.
You've lost the narrative that defined you to your peers, your family, and most importantly, to yourself. You are no longer the hero of the struggle story.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like an existential crisis waiting to happen. So Subconsciously, I might sabotage my own attempts to change just to preserve my identity as the struggler.
Yes, absolutely. The source highlights this cycle of repeating old patterns. If I believe deep down that I am a person who struggles, I will subconsciously seek out or even create struggles to validate that reality.
Confirmation bias turned inward.
Perfectly put. It's confirmation bias for the self. We seek coherence. We want our external world to match our internal belief system. If I believe life is hard, I will find the hard path. Even if an easy one is right there, it feels more real to me.
So changing a habit isn't just about changing what you do. It's about changing who you think you are.
That's the core of it.
You have to be willing to let the grinder or the martyr die so the new version of you can live.
Which brings us to the emotional cost of starting over that the source mentions. This is another massive barrier, and it's completely tied to identity.
Yeah, talk to me about this. Because on the surface, starting over sounds exciting. Fresh slate, new beginning. But the source frames it as a cost.
Well, think about the investment you have in your current misery. Let's go back to that job you hate. You've been there 5 years. You have seniority. You know the acronyms. You know where the bathroom is. You have status. Even if it's status in a place you despise, you are a known entity. You are an expert in your own little dysfunctional world.
Right. I've put in the time. I have equity in this place, even if it's misery equity.
Exactly. Misery equity. If you leave to start something new, you are a beginner again. You are at the bottom of the hierarchy. You are the one who asks dumb questions. You have to be vulnerable. You lose that accumulated equity of competence.
Oof.
That is a heavy emotional tax to pay.
It's the ego, isn't it? The ego hates being a beginner.
The ego loathes it. It wants to be seen as competent and in control. And then there's also the sunk cost fallacy at play here.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Huge. It's the fear that if I change paths now, the last 5 years were wasted.
I can't quit law school now. I've already done 2 years, even if you hate law.
Precisely. Or, I can't leave this relationship. We've been together for a decade. We stay to validate the time we've already spent rather than cutting our losses to save the time we have left.
We'd rather be miserable and consistent with our past decisions
than happy and starting over. We prioritize the continuity of the story over the quality of the story.
That hits hard. Miserable and consistent. It really highlights how much we value continuity, even a continuity of pain.
We crave a coherent narrative. It all makes sense, even if it hurts.
But okay, let's say we are in this situation. We are stuck, we are vaguely miserable, but we aren't doing anything about it. Well, actually, that's not true. We are doing something. We're complaining.
Ah, yes, the illusion of action.
The source explicitly mentions how complaining can replace action. I think this is something we are all guilty of. I mean, grabbing a coffee with a coworker and just venting about the boss, it feels so good.
Well, it feels fantastic.
So why is that a trap?
It feels good because it works, physiologically. When you vent, you are releasing built-up stress hormones like cortisol. You are articulating your frustration, which gives it a name. It creates a sense of solidarity with the person you are venting to. You see it too. I'm not crazy.
Right. It validates your experience.
And all of that lowers your internal pressure gauge.
So it's a pressure valve.
Exactly. But here's the problem with pressure valves. They stop the explosion. And sometimes you need the explosion to blow the door off the hinges so you can walk out.
Oh, I see where this is going. If I let off steam every day, I never build up enough steam to actually power the engine of change.
You got it. Complaining makes the situation bearable. It makes the intolerable tolerable for just one more day or one more week. It tricks the brain into feeling like you have done something about the problem. I addressed it. I talked about it.
But you didn't talk to the problem, like the boss. You talk about the problem to someone who can't fix it.
And by doing so, you reduce the urgency. Misery needs to reach a certain pitch, a certain level of acute pain to overcome the fear of the unknown we talked about earlier. Complaining keeps the misery just below that boiling point. It's a maintenance mechanism for misery, not a solution to it.
It's a maintenance mechanism for misery. That is a brutal realization. It actively keeps us stuck by making us feel slightly better in the short term.
And we bond over it, too. We create complaining circles.
The misery loves company dynamic.
We do. And that reinforces the identity piece we just discussed. If your whole social circle at work is built around mutual commiseration about how terrible things are,
then what happens when you stop complaining?
You alienate yourself from the group. Oh, look at Bob. He's too good for us now. He's actually trying to fix things. You disrupt the social contract.
It's the crab bucket mentality. If one crab tries to climb out, the others pull him back down.
It's exactly that. So complaining serves a social function and an emotional regulation function, but it actively, powerfully prevents progress.
It creates a feedback loop of inaction. You feel bad, you complain, you feel slightly better to stay, you feel bad again.
Repeat ad infinitum.
Okay, so we've got familiarity, identity, and this complaint loop. But there's another layer the source digs into, and this is the one that I think a lot of our listeners who are perfectionists or high achievers will recognize. It's the concept of not ready.
The not ready excuse. This is one of the most sophisticated disguises fear ever wears.
The source says, fear of judgment and failure hiding behind not ready. I feel attacked. I mean, how many times have I said, I'm just doing a little more research before I launch, or I need to get this one more certification before I apply?
It sounds so prudent, doesn't it? So responsible. I'm not procrastinating. I'm preparing. I'm being strategic.
Yes, it sounds like the smart thing to do.
But in reality, not ready is often a socially acceptable mask for the terror of judgment.
How so?
Because if you are preparing, you haven't entered the arena yet. You can't be judged on your performance if you haven't performed. You can't fail if you haven't launched. As long as you are in the planning phase, your potential is still intact. It's infinite. The moment you act, you risk colliding with reality. And reality might show you that you're not as good as you hoped.
So staying in the learning or planning phase is a way to protect the ego from the possibility of being not good enough.
Exactly. For the entrepreneur, this looks like endlessly tweaking the business plan or the logo or the website, but never actually trying to sell the product. For the professional, it looks like waiting for the perfect time to ask for a promotion or quit the job. I'll wait until the market stabilizes. I'll wait until after this big project is done. I'll wait till after the holidays.
There is always a reason to wait. There is always one more thing to learn or one more obstacle on the horizon.
And the source connects us back to the fear of uncertainty. We are trying to predict the outcome before we make the move. We want to guarantee that if we jump, we will land softly.
Yeah, but life doesn't give guarantees.
No, it doesn't. So we interpret that lack of a guarantee as, I'm not ready. Really, it just means I'm not certain.
It's paralysis by analysis. But deep down, it's just plain old fear.
It is fear of what others will think. What if I try this new venture and it flocks? Everyone will say I was foolish to leave my stable job. That fear of social judgment is a powerful tether holding us to the familiar misery.
You know, connecting all these dots, identity, familiarity, fear, the complaint loop, it makes the situation feel incredibly heavy. It's no wonder people stay stuck for decades.
Right.
It's not just one thing. It's a whole web of psychological safety mechanisms working against us.
It is a web. And that brings us to the most important part of the source material, the way out. And the source is very specific here. The way out is not brute force. It's not hustle harder or just do it.
Thank goodness for that. I think we're all a little tired of the just push through the pain advice.
Me too. It rarely works for this kind of problem. The source calls for compassionate change.
Compassion and understanding rather than blame.
Yes. This is crucial. If you can understand that your brain is keeping you stuck because it is trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe from the unknown, trying to preserve your identity, you can stop hating yourself for it.
That's a huge shift.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I'm such a coward for not quitting, you say, my brain is prioritizing safety, which is a natural human instinct.
Exactly. And when you remove the shame, you remove a lot of the friction. Shame is a terrible fuel for long-term change. It burns hot and fast, and then it leaves you exhausted and feeling worse than when you started. Compassion allows you to look at the situation objectively, like a kind scientist observing a phenomenon. Isn't it interesting that my brain is doing this?
So, if we aren't using brute force or shame, what is the strategy? The source talks about small shifts.
Practical ways to make small shifts without needing dramatic reinvention. This is the antidote to the fear of the unknown.
Why small? Why not just rip the bandage off? Go big or go home.
Because ripping the bandage off, dramatic reinvention triggers that terror response we talked about. If you say, tomorrow I am going to quit my job, move to Bali, and become a yoga instructor, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, goes into a 5-alarm panic.
Red alert.
It shuts you down. It's too much unknown, too big of an identity shift. It freezes you.
So you just end up doing nothing.
Right. But if you say, tomorrow during my lunch break, I am going to spend 15 minutes updating my LinkedIn profile, the amygdala stays quiet. It doesn't even notice.
Oh.
It's a known quantity. It's safe.
Yeah.
It's a micro movement.
It flies under the radar of the fear response.
Precisely. The source suggests we need to bypass the brain's fear radar. You build momentum through these micro movements. You don't overhaul your entire lifestyle. You change the first 10 minutes of your morning. You don't decide to write a novel. You decide to write one sentence.
Can we give some concrete examples here? Let's say someone is in that job they hate. They feel stuck. The idea of quitting makes them hyperventilate. What is a small shift?
Okay, a small shift is something that introduces a tiny variance into the routine without threatening the whole structure. Maybe it's taking a different route to work.
That sounds almost too small.
Yeah.
How does eating lunch outside fix a toxic job?
It doesn't fix the job. It fixes you. It proves to your brain that you have agency. It proves that you can deviate from the pattern and survive. You are reclaiming a tiny slice of autonomy.
Ah, I see. You're retraining the brain to accept change. You're building the muscle of doing things differently.
Yes. It's like desensitization therapy for your fear of the unknown. You're teaching your nervous system that different doesn't equal dangerous.
Okay, so I take a different route to work. Then what?
Then you scale it up. Maybe next week you reach out to one contact at a different company. Just a casual, hey, how's it going? Email. Again, low stakes. No unknown cliff.
Yeah.
But you are gathering data. You are making the unknown slightly more known.
And suddenly the idea of leaving isn't this massive dark void. It's a series of concrete, manageable steps that you've already started taking.
Exactly. You are building a bridge to the new life, brick by brick, rather than trying to jump the canyon in one go.
And this applies to identity too, right? You don't have to go from the grinder to the Zen master overnight.
No, please don't. That will cause an identity rebellion. You can just be the grinder who takes Sundays completely off. You try on a slightly modified identity. You see that the world doesn't end if you don't check email for 24 hours. You realize you are still valuable. You are still you, even when you aren't suffering for your work.
That is profound. You're testing the hypothesis. The hypothesis is, if I stop suffering, will I still be loved, valued, safe? And when the answer comes back yes, you can let go of the struggle a little more.
That is the path of compassionate change. It respects the fear, but it doesn't let the fear drive the bus. It lets curiosity and small actions take the wheel for a little while.
This has been such an illuminating walk through the mechanics of misery and, more importantly, the way out.
Yeah.
I want to try and summarize what we've covered because there were some real gems here.
Let's do it.
So we started with the central paradox. Misery isn't always a catalyst for change. We often stay because of familiarity. The known bad is safer to our primitive brains than the unknown good.
Mm-hmm. And then we discussed identity, how we wrap our sense of self around our struggles, so giving up the struggle feels like a death of the self. We get attached to the narrative of our own suffering.
We talked about the illusion of action, how complaining acts as that pressure valve that releases just enough stress to keep us stuck, creating a maintenance mechanism for misery.
And we looked at fear hiding as not ready, how we use preparation and perfectionism to avoid the judgment of the real world. We masquerade our fear as prudence and strategy.
And finally, the solution isn't self-hatred or dramatic upheavals. It's compassionate change through small shifts, bypassing the fear radar, proving to ourselves slowly that we can survive doing things differently.
That is a solid recap. The key takeaway really is that awareness breaks the cycle. Once you see that you are choosing familiarity over happiness, once you can name that mechanism, you can start to consciously make a different choice, even if it's a tiny one.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that safety mechanism and saying, thank you, brain, for trying to keep me alive, but I'd like to do more than just survive today.
Beautifully put.
Now, before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a thought, a little provocation to chew on. We talked a lot about complaining and how it bonds us to people in shared misery.
Yes, the social glue of unhappiness.
So here is the question.
Yeah.
If you stopped complaining about the situation that makes you unhappy, if you stopped venting about the boss, the economy, the struggle, would you still have enough in common with your current circle of friends or colleagues to maintain those relationships?
That is a scary question.
Or is the shared misery the only thing holding the connection together?
If the answer is the latter, that might be the first known you need to challenge.
Just something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time. Come on.
for spending this time with us on Coffee Break. If this conversation stayed with you, you can find more episodes here on the channel. Until next time, take care.